Hello. Thank you for joining us for our virtual Christmas wreath making tutorial for Green Christmas. My name is James and behind the camera is Risty, and we are filming our Green Christmas program at Woodhaven Nature Conservancy Regional Park on the traditional and unceded territory of the Okanagan Silk people. So first off, thank you again for being so accommodating with all of the cancellations and rescheduling we've had to do for this program, and we hope that this is informational and enjoyable activity for all of you to do. So to begin with, I'm going to go over some of the materials that we have that you'll need to make sure you have before we do the program, before we do the wreath making. On the table here I have a pair of pruners, a pair of scissors, wire cutters, so please grab these before we go any further. There's also going to be some wire that's included in your package. You'll see some of this skinny green wire for attaching stuff, as well as some zap straps, which we'll use to help make the frame. There's also some ribbon that Risty's going to show us how to make a ribbon at the end to attach to the wreath. In addition to that is all the material that we supplied in your package. So there may be some ponderosa pine boughs with the long needles. And please note that all the packages are going to be a little bit different. So you may have some ponderosa pine. You may have some Douglas fir with the short needles. And you may have some cedar with the scales and the leaves and the delicious smell. There'll be some rose hips in there for additional decoration. Some pine cones. These are ponderosa pine cones. There may be some spruce cones or fir cones. And here I have some Oregon grape leaves that have that nice red color to add to the wreath as well. And the last thing that I have here is what we're going to make the frame out of. Red osier dogwood stems. So these like to grow around ponds or in wetlands, and as you can see, they grow in really long, straight pieces, but once you start to work them a little bit, they're very bendy, and we can form them into the frames for our wreath. So to start with, I like to just sort of massage it a little bit so that it gets loose. If it's too stiff at the base, this is where you can use your pruners. You can just cut off some of that stiff bits so that you have nice and bendy parts for the frame. And when you're starting, it can be tricky because there's not much to grab onto there. So maybe that's the size of a wreath, that's the size of a wreath. Whatever size you like, you can make it and work it. And I kind of wind it around like that to help it bind. But if I were to let go, this is going to pop off. So that's where the zap straps come in handy. You can put a zap strap on here as an extra hand, and then it'll hold it in place for you. So I'm going to tie a zap strap on here. And trim off the extra bit. And that's the start of our frame. Then you can grab another piece of the red osier dogwood and start weaving it in. So one tip that I like to give is once there's a base of a stem there, go maybe 15 centimeters further down and start with the next stem there, and then that way those stiff bits are going to balance out. So now I start weaving it around again. And you gotta pull it in, pull it through, and you just weave it around. And then when you get to that end with the other stem, here's an opportunity to use the dogwood, or if you need, you can put another zap strap there if it's not holding on for you. So there'll be a handful of zap straps in your kit so that each of those stems you tighten into place, and you can see how it really starts to take shape pretty quickly. Depending on how big a frame you'd like and how much material is how big a frame and how thick you want it to be. but you can see that there's the nice start for our wreath. Here we have one that's started quite a nice ways along, and I'm going to hop right into this one here and show you what the next steps are. In your package, you'll have about 10 to 12 of these dogwood stems to use for your wreath frame. So you can make it quite thick. This one is 2, this one's got about 5 or 6 in there, and if you want to use all 12, then it'll get even thicker than that. So now we're going to start to add some of the greenery to our wreath. And here's where you'll need the pruners again, and you can determine how bushy you would like your wreath or how compact. So depending on that style, you can put small pieces of greenery or big bushy pieces of greenery. I'm going to go for a little bit of a bushier look. So I'm going to trim about that much of the cedar, and I'm going to just tie it together a little bit. And when I get it now, there's lots of nice little pockets in the frame that we've made when we wove the dogwood to weave some of this cedar into. So I weave it in and out like that, and then now you can see that I'm going to just tuck it in there, and the cedar's starting to take shape on the frame. There'll also be some green wire in your kits, and we're going to cut 20 pieces for each of you, and they're going to be about 10 to 15 centimeters. And you can use these pieces here to help hold some of those things in place. So if you want to do that, just twist it around there and tie it off. And that'll help hold some of those green materials in place. And the wire is nice and green, so it's hidden as well. So I'm going to do one more piece of the cedar here. Find a nice branch right there. Wow, that's a nice bushy one. And again, I'm just going to start by tucking it through the frame a little bit and trying to hide that stem a little bit, and then pull that through, put it in the wreath there, and it's starting to get that nice full green look to it. Now we can imagine we can go all the way around. It's going to take a little bit of time. We're going to skip forward, and we're going to take a look at adding some of the other elements. So again, using that green wire is a great way to add some of the rose hips or pine cones or Oregon grape if you'd like. So I'm going to add some rose hips. I'm going to snip that one off and put them in with this Oregon grape right here. So I like the way that that looks just like that. Some nice red berries, some nice red leaves. And I'm going to start by tying that all together with the green wire. So you can see they have the stems attached, and all of those materials that we provide will have the stems still intact. So you can tie that stuff together. Then, once it's tied together, we can add it into the wreath. So I've made it like that. Then I'm going to find the spot just where I would like it. I think it looks good right there in amongst all that cedar. And I'm going to use the wire to help hold it in place and twist it around. With this element here adds a nice little feature to your wreath. And once it's in place there, you can kind of move things around a little bit and make it look just right. Now with that, I'm going to pass the camera over to me and let Risty come on here and show you all how to make a bow to finish off your wreath. Thank you.
Thank you, James. Quite beautiful, quite lovely. So a nice touch often to finish off any sort of holiday wreath is a bow, and I have a very simple trick to share on how to make a quick bow for your wreath. It could be a bow for anything really. So I have here some ribbon, and this ribbon has a wire edge on it, and that's sort of the trick with these bows. You need to have a ribbon with a wire edge because the wire will help you to form the bow, and the wire then of course will keep the shape that you put it in. So when looking for a ribbon, look for one that has a wire edge to it, and it'll say right on the packaging that it has a wire edge. So I like this one. It's got the ponderosa pine cones on it. It's got some nice color that's going to go well with the wreath that James has started. So I will just snip off a nice long length of it. There's probably almost 2 meters here, I would say, which seems like a lot, but you'll see in a moment that
the perfect physical distancing amount.
I was going to say 2 meters is a measurement that we're all very familiar with right now. So you fold it in half. So I started with the whole length of it, which seems like a lot, but it's not really. You fold it in half, and then I'm going to fold it in half again, and then I'm going to fold it in half a final time. I think I'm going to stop here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece of that green wire that you have in your bundle, and I'm going to fasten it around right here. If I were to fold this in half another time, if I were to fasten it in the middle, then it's too small for me to really work with. There's not enough room there. So right about here I'm going to decide is enough to keep to stop folding at this point. And it depends on the length of ribbon that you cut off originally, but if you start with about 2 meters, then that gives you plenty to work with. So I'll snip off a piece of the wire here, and I'll fasten it right around where I think the middle is, right there. Twist it nice and tight so that holds this in place, and then all this extra bit at the end as well will give us some wire that we can use to attach it to the wreath when we're done. So now this is where the wired edges come in handy, because now we just start to pull it open. All these different loops in here, we'll open them up. Go on to the other side, spread the ribbon apart, spread the loops apart. If you've got some tails down here, then we can arrange those. And it's really just a matter of opening up the loops, how big and round you want them, and with the wired edges you can shape it any way you like, and just play with that a bit. Play with the tails, and then we've got the wire here on the end. You know what, I think I like it over by the rose hips. It's a bit of a focal point here on the wreath with the Oregon grape and the red of the rose hips, and now the bow. And just fasten it on there with the wire. And then once I've got it hanging on my door, I might just play around with it a little bit more. And I could stop here, or I could keep going and add greenery all the way around. It really depends what sort of style you're looking for. And the beauty of the red osier dogwood is that over time, these sticks, these branches will keep this shape. So we did attach them now with these zap straps, but next Christmas, a year from now, this frame will be dry enough that you can actually take your scissors, snip off these zap straps, and the frame will hold this shape. Give it about a year and the fiber in the wood will dry out and hold this shape, and you can snip off these zap straps and use this frame as your base for many, many years to come. So thank you again for joining us for our Green Christmas wreath making. We really appreciate that you joined us online in this format, and we look forward to seeing you again next year. Have happy holidays, and watch for more online programming. You can go to rdco.com/parks.